folks I know have asked today and in the last week or two, how did this all come about? How did the Montana stock growers, how did the auction markets kind of come together here and kind of co-host these deals and come forward? And I think it started, probably years ago we had the industry roundtable meeting there in Phoenix, and we got quite a few folks here that were there, and had the great honor to sit in on that thing. And to me, it's one of the greatest meetings. I think maybe the best meeting I've ever sat in, and I think Leo would probably agree with that. But it was a meeting that the Livestock Marketing Association hosted and invited in the major industry groups. We've invited in 4 different members from each group, from RCAF, U.S. Cattlemen, NCBA, Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, and the NCBA, or the LMA. And each of us had 4 members, and came in, and it was nothing short of a story to get all of those folks in one room and not want to kill each other. And folks, it was it really was, after you kind of went around that table and introduced yourselves, and everybody kind of had the same idea. You could say there was 24 of us sitting there. We had a moderator. But it was really nothing short of historic in the fact that by the time we got all the way around the table, really we came to find out we have a lot more in common than we fight about. I mean, there's 5, 6, 7% of the stuff that we sit up here and throw rocks at each other over. There's 95% of the stuff that we as an industry, we agree upon. And it was really evident in that meeting. And long story short, I'm not sure we'll ever get it put back together, but it really did prove that we as an industry have a lot in common. And so we went back to the board. I say we, I've had the great pleasure of sitting on the Livestock Market Association board, where we represent over 800 and some member markets that help market cattle all over the United States. And when you get a bunch of auction market owners sitting around a table, folks, and it's a real common thing. I don't care if you're from Virginia, I don't care if you're from California, I don't care if you're from Texas, from Midwest, Montana. It's a real common theme, and that theme is we're losing producers. We're losing, we continue to sell and have big dispersions of cows, big dispersions of sheep. We continue to lose land out of livestock production. And I think it's time we push back. It's time we start incentivizing people into staying in livestock production, into leaving their land in livestock production. And we as auction market owners at the time sure don't want to be the person that carries it to the carries all of this across the finish line. I think that's a producer organization's job. But I do think we have every right in the world to start the conversation, and we have done that. And I'm so proud of the Montana stock growers. We got together with the stock growers and started this conversation. We had a focus group meeting here a year or so in Billings. Quite a few folks here sat in on that with us, with the that we hosted, to try to gather some information on his fact. What can we come together on? What can we find common ground on? And we had several members of the stock growers there. I know Fred was there, Dirk was there. I know Rusty Ellis was there. We had quite a few, 14, 15 people we invited in, and hoping to start this conversation, and it definitely did. The resolutions, I hope everybody has seen the resolutions that the Montana stock growers passed here at their last convention. But to me, folks, it was nothing short of historic what they got done. And the biggest directive, the biggest thing was the directive that they passed in my mind, and I'm speaking from a guy, not as an LMA guy, but as a guy that has a family that owns 3 of these things, that has a seed stock operation that definitely needs producers. That's who I'm here representing tonight. And from a producer, from a guy that owns a business in rural Main Street America, I couldn't be more proud of the Montana stock growers right now, because they are way outside their comfort zone, way outside any of our comfort zones. They're kind of in uncharted waters right now, in my opinion, as far as the resolutions they passed, as far as the directive they passed. And to me, and they'll go over what the directives and the resolutions are, but the one that really hit home to me was the directive, where they call for unification across industry groups on these like-minded ideas. There has never been, in my recollection, there has never been a state affiliate of the NCBA ever called for unification. And we've got to unify, folks. We make up less than 2% of the population. We're growing all the food for 100% of this population and a big share of the world. We have got to come together and get this thing, in my mind, find some common ground and get some real things going. And we had a meeting, the LMA had these focus group meetings that kind of brought up some things that we can find common ground on. We held one in Alabama. We held one in Montgomery, Alabama. We held one in Scott City, Kansas. We held one in Missouri. We held one right here in Billings. And we held two in California. And had producers just like yourself sitting there and getting some ideas. A lot of these producers were very well established. Some of them were young people that were struggling. And we really got some ideas, and some of the resolutions and the directive that the stock growers have passed are a lot of those ideas that came out of those meetings. But there's one thing that I think of every day since we've had these meetings, and it was the second meeting we had in California. And we had a bunch of dairy guys there, big dairy producers out of California. One was a very large, one of their main lobbyists. And we could not get him off topic in this meeting. He said, you as a beef industry have done a horrible job the last 80 years telling your story. He wouldn't get off topic, wouldn't talk about, you can have all these other perks and these things, he says, but the first thing you have to do to get any of these perks is you've got to tell your story. And I finally stopped him. I says, what do you mean by telling our story? He said, you need to tell your story and educate the people that make policy. So you don't necessarily need to educate and tell your story to the people within your own industry. They know it. He says you're really not going to get much done trying to educate and tell your story to the consumer. But he says you better have a real focused and direct story to the people that make policy for you folks. And you people are horrible at it. And I think that's the one thing why we want to bring this whole a group of people together. We got people here from RCAP. We got people here from the U.S. Cattlemen. We got people here from the Stock Growers NCBA groups, the Farmers Union, the Farm Bureau. We've got folks that have a real diverse group of folks here. But when we get to our national level, all of these different industry groups, including the LMA, we all have different number ones. We all have different number twos. So we go into these policymakers in DC, and one group goes in with number one ask, number two ask, next group goes in and his is exactly the opposite. I'm not saying we don't have to have different groups keeping different groups of people within this industry accountable. I'm not. I mean, for those of you that know our family, we've been right in the fight. But this is a time, folks, in my mind, that we've got to unify. We've got to come together. And I'm not saying all of our industry groups need to have the same number one, but we better damn sure have the same number two. We better all go in there with the same story, with the same ask, and that really matters to people in grassroots America. How do we get the access to capital to not only young people, but for all of us in this industry? How do we get access to land to grow roughage? How do we get that on an equal playing field with our neighbors in the farming business? And those are the kind of things I think that we need to talk about tonight. The one thing I think we're going to have a game rule, and I think they'll go over it, but I think the only way these meetings like this tonight are going to work is we got a few game rules. And number one is we're not going to talk about things that we know we as an industry aren't going to unify around. We're not going to talk about country of origin labeling, whether you like it or you don't like it. We're not going to talk about the beef checkoff, whether you like it or you don't like it. We're not going to talk about fed cattle marketing and this and that on the kind of things that, because Folks, we have all fought over this. We have almost destroyed ourselves from within because we can't agree on nothing that's going to make a real difference for the people that sell grass, for the people that have the cows and the calves, for the people that keep businesses like this, that keep your Ace Hardwares, your business along a Main Street, rural America in business. And that's why we're here tonight. I'm not here representing the LMA. I'm not here representing anybody but me and my family, and trying to keep our operation generational, trying to keep this thing to where we can keep these rural American towns from becoming ghost towns. And I think I am so proud of the stock growers. I'm so proud of all of you folks that are sitting here today, because the whole world's watching Billings, Montana tonight, no question about it. I've had more calls today than I've had in a long, long time, because they're watching Billings, Montana, and wondering how this thing's going to come out. And to me, what's going to happen here tonight, this is a listening session. The stock growers, the boards, all this and that, we've done all the debating and all the talking we need to do. What we need to do now is listen to you, the grassroots people that got skin in the game, that makes a real difference. And to me, again, we welcome you. I'm going to turn it over to Rayleigh Honeycutt, and she's going to kind of tell you kind of the way of the way tonight. And but anyway, let's give Rayleigh, and the one person I do want to introduce, where are you at, Forrest? Forrest Mangan's right up here. If you haven't met him, he's our regional executive officer of the livestock markets. He's kind of the guy that keeps all of us auction markets in the whole western part of America in line. We got a wonderful team, and I know he's a big part of why we pulled this whole thing off. And let's give Forrest a big hand. That's probably the only thing he gets out of this whole trip, but we really do appreciate him being here. So here's Rayleigh.
Well, thank you, Joe, and I think we need to give a round of applause to Joe for his passion and leadership as we kind of kick off this initiative in the state. So thank you, Joe, and thank you for hosting as well. So I know many of you, but for those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet, I'm Rayleigh Honeycutt and serve as the Executive Vice President of the Montana Stock Growers Association. First off, we want to thank you all for coming out. Again, the weather was not so great, so thank you for hitting those challenging roads and joining us this evening. One quick disclaimer, we are live streaming this online as well as recording it, so wanted to just let everybody be aware of that, and we will be making that video available for those that couldn't attend, and we plan to live stream and have video options for our future meetings. So for those of you who are not aware, this is the first of a kind of road show that Montana Stock Growers will be kicking off. We will be hitting every auction market in the state over the next about 9 weeks, and really excited to hear from multiple producers around the state on their thoughts and ideas around producer profitability. So before we kick it off and kind of open it up to our comment period, which is why we're here, we do want to hear from you. I did want to recognize the Montana stock grower leaders that are in the room. So tonight we have with us President John Grandy, First Vice President Leslie Robinson, Second Vice President Turk Stovall, and then Ian Glennie's here as well. He serves as our young stock grower representative on the Montana Stock Growers Board of Directors. So please help me in welcoming them as well. We also do want to extend our thanks to the Montana Livestock Market Auctions as well as LMA for being such great partners in this initiative. Obviously, it's great to be at these sale barns where everybody conducts their business, and I'm really appreciative to everyone for opening up their doors so graciously as we kind of hit the road this spring. I also wanted to recognize we have a few elected official representatives and candidates in the room. So if you are here representing an elected official or are an elected official or a candidate, please stand up and quickly introduce yourself. Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Tori. Others. All right, well, let's kick it off. As you have heard tonight, that we really are wanting to focus our evening on producer profitability in those areas of consensus. So just to give you a quick rundown of how we'll run the meeting, we will break it into 3 different segments. We will have Turk Stovall joining us in just a few minutes. He'll be kind of covering the areas of focus that Montana Stock Growers has identified to kick off the conversation. These are not predetermined solutions or predetermined areas, just kind of areas to start the conversation. Really tonight, we really want to talk about all ideas, thoughts, and challenges that you're facing. So while we have predetermined some topics, the sky is kind of the limit with the parameters that we are not going to talk about anything that we disagree on. In addition to that, then we will move to a fun little interactive segment. So you'll see on the screens we have some slides up. Don't fail me on this one because I'm really excited about it, but you will have the opportunity to pull out your cell phones, and we're going to do some live polling. So as we ask you a few questions, you'll be able to answer those. That will allow us to collect some data for what you guys are thinking, and the fun option is that you will be seeing everybody's answers live while you all submit your comments. And then lastly, we will open it up, and this will be the largest portion of our evening, is opening it up to public comment. So we'll have those 5 categories and time for each of you to provide feedback, thoughts, or ideas around those, and then we'll have an open comment segment where if you have other thoughts, ideas, concerns, or challenges, we'd love to hear those from you at that time. So with that kind of lays the ground rules, and I wanted to then now hand it over to Church Stovall, who will give a quick rundown of the background of where Montana Stock Growers is and what we're thinking moving into the future.
Thank you, Raylene. I wanted to echo the fact I really appreciate everybody taking the time to come here tonight. I know the weather's not that great. There's never a perfect time, but we're just saying now's the time. Now's the time to talk about some pretty important topics. And I wanted just to kind of echo a little bit of what Joe said of just how we got here. And it really came down from conversations. And it's come to conversations just maybe between 2 people, and then it was a group of people, and then it just built from there. And it's just really a stair-step process. And this is an evolution. And I'm not trying to say that everything we're doing tonight is perfect, but it's a start. And it's something that we haven't really done before. And we're trying to get uncomfortable. We're trying to get ourselves vulnerable. We're trying to say, hey, we want to hear from people. We might not all have the same ideas, but we need to start working together. And how can we best do that? And I did want to highlight also is, as we participated in these working groups. And when you looked around the table, we all looked at each other and go, hey, you know what? These are definitely all outfits from Montana. And we all were on the same page, and we all raised cattle, and we're all faced with the same blizzards and the hardships that we do on a daily basis. But then when we start to talk about, hey, politics or all that, we start seeing, hey, we might all think a little bit different. But from that, we said, hey, you know what? I know this guy, he's part of an organization I'm part of, and there's some good ideas that came through that. Maybe we should bring that to through our process. And that's what happened through Stock Growers. It was Montana Stock Growers members that started talking about and saying, hey, let's get together and hey, can we really make a difference here? And I just want to highlight Mike and Jim and Rusty Ellis and a bunch of us and Fred Wacker. Where's Fred at? A lot of us got together and got to talk about this and got together with Joe and said, hey, can we bring some resolutions together? And it came through the grassroots organization and the governance of the Montana Stock Growers. And then it got passed and, it got debated and passed at the convention that really led us to here. And there's a process, and we're just wanting to continue that process of these building blocks. As we go through tonight, our staff has done a great job of different ways of gathering information and participate, because we want to hear people's ideas. And we're going to open it up and talk about it. But hopefully this is all gathering information that we're going to build on. We're going through all of the sale barns in Montana, and we're going to continue to go through this, and we're going to learn from tonight and say, hey, what can we do better next time? But ultimately, we want to be able to compile all these ideas and go to Senator Daines and say, you know what, we heard from the grassroots of Montana. And this is what we need. And this is what we're facing. And we believe these could be some solutions. And so this is where we're trying to go with it. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce my wife and my youngest son, Christian, up here, and my daughter, Reagan. Now, normally Reagan, she would probably want the microphone. But just like Joe said, that's why I'm here. And you all have your families, and how are we going to help this next generation get involved and want to get involved? And we all talk about it every day. Gosh, this next generation, boy, we can sit and talk about it all the time. They don't want to work, or they don't, now we got to hire grants. But we need to get to the real topics. And there's all kinds of topics, and we tried to boil it down. And so that's why we have these handouts. There's 5 topics on there. I mean, is that all the topics? No. But we got to start somewhere. First one on there is we got to have a favorable tax system. Obviously the state tax has been a topic for a long time. And can we get somewhere to maybe it's not even there anymore? When we go down here into these government programs, sometimes that's a taboo thing to talk about in the livestock industry. But should we at least be at the table to say, hey, this is what we want? Or what you're offering here is not working. And if we go down to barriers of entry, I've already got to talk with a few of you that came here and we talked about, hey, I sure would like to get more in the cattle business. If you don't have any history, how are you going to get a loan to do this? How are you going to go get some land? What is there out there to help these young people get going? We call them young people. And I don't remember, maybe it was Jenny that shared it. I think the average age of someone getting into this business is 47 years old. Actually, I'm 47 years old. And so, the dynamics have changed. So do all of our programs fit that anymore? I don't know, but we need to talk about that. This labor thing, we talk about it all the time. Hey, I'd love to get a little bit bigger, but I can't find the help. Or maybe you're Joe's family, you're just going to have some more family, right? But it's a topic, right? Well, what are we doing about it? A lot of us, we started using this H2A thing. I feel like I'm the most red, white, blue guy out there, but I almost feel like we had no choice. But does this H2A program really fit a Montana rancher? This is another thing about mentors, is we hear it a lot. Hey, I have a legacy ranch, my kids don't want to come back, or maybe I don't have kids. Well, is there someone out there that you can mentor to get into the ranching business? And this is just the beginning, folks. And so we sure look forward to all of your comments. And by and large, today is not a day of condemning ourselves. Today is a trying to, how can we work together? Are there different ideas that will lead into another idea? And we want to try to get it recorded and make the best use of it. So we sure appreciate everybody being here today and look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Turk. Well, before we dive into the comment period, I had a couple other quick reminders for everyone. So I know we may run out of time or run short on time, or as you drive home or in 4 days, you might think of additional thoughts, comments, feedback. The Montana Stock Growers has set up on our website a form to submit feedback and comments. So if you go to mtbeef.org/profitability, you'll find an online form where you can submit all of your thoughts. You can submit it multiple times as the weeks or months roll on. If you have feedback, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to check out that website. That's where we will also be keeping up to date our meeting schedule, any other topics, some of the results that we find and seek out from these meetings. So that will kind of be the hub for you to stay up to date with the Producer Profitability Initiative. Additionally, when you walked in, you received a contact information card. We're asking everyone to fill out that card. And our friends at Western Ranch Supply have graciously donated a vaccine cooler tonight for us to give away. So if you fill out that card and submit it or drop it in the cooler, or at the end we'll do kind of an all call for any outstanding cards. Tonight we'll be wrapping it up with a cooler drawing. So hopefully that will incentivize you. We'll use that to keep you up to date via email blasts and things like that on the initiative as well. All right, so now is the fun part. So everybody have their cell phone? Grab your cell phone. Excellent. And on the producer profitability one sheet that we gave, at the top there is a blue bar that says menti.com, MENTI.com. And then there's a passcode, 35620565. If you go to your web browser, enter that website and that code, you will see the first survey question that we'll be doing. Those of you listening online as well, you are more than welcome to participate in that. Kenny can drop that in the chat.
I did.
Awesome, she's dropped that in the chat already. So, all right, Ellie, do you want to click to the next slide? So we have 5 quick questions that we want to ask you, and they should be prompted. Did they show up on your screen, or do we need a few more minutes? Okay, let's back up. I'll repeat it. All right, so in your browser, menti.com, and then the number is 35620565, and it is also on your piece of paper, your producer profitability piece of paper. Do you have a piece of paper, Mike? Oh. All right, Kenny, we have a help desk person right here. All right, you should be getting a sign until we flip, a hold sign until we flip to the next slide. All right, are we good? Some folks locked in? All right, let's click to the first slide. All right, we want to hear from you. What do you think about, when you think of producer profitability, what are 3 words that come to mind? So you can enter those 3 words online as you see on the screen. Some folks' answers have already been submitted and they're popping up. More coming in, great. I love how everybody has their cell phone out, great. Oh, some of you are pretending to have your cell phone out, great. Awesome, as you can see, the more of the same answer that populates, the bigger the words will get on that word cloud, so we're starting to see some maybe themes. We will give it just a few more minutes and move on to the next one. Opportunity, sustainability, taxes. Those are kind of the big themes that we're seeing. Awesome, loving all these words coming in. Legacy, I love that word. All right, everybody feeling good? All right, let's, Ellie, move on to the next question. In 20 words or less, share with us the biggest challenges you face in your operations growth and success. This is the quietest I've ever heard a cell phone. This one's a little harder to see, but lots of labor, barriers to entry, family wanting to continue to ranch, government overreach, workforce succession, access to capital. Excellent, keep sending us those and we'll give you a few more minutes. Lots of labor, it looks like. High costs. Changing hands in the operation. Government risk. We'll give you about 30 more seconds. All right, moving on to question 3. In the last 10 years, what tools or programs have been the most beneficial for your operations profitability? H2A, enterprise budgeting, continuous learning, low interest, LRP, farm credit system, growth through agricultural loans, membership organizations. Good job, Chirk, way to plug Montana stock growers there. Ability to sell land, drought relief, improved technology. We've got to give our media, trusted media. Shout out to the media joining us tonight. Thanks. We have Northern Ag Network here and Western Ag Network, Western Ag Reporter, the Aaron Flint Show, Montana Talks is here with us as well. Thank you guys all for joining us. All right, let's move on to, we have 2 more questions. Let's move on to our next question. Hit it one more time. Oh wait, sorry.
That is the next question.
What do you believe will be the biggest challenge the livestock industry will face in the next 20 years? We're back to our fun little word cloud. It's much faster this time. You guys must be getting used to it. Market manipulation, government, workforce, taxes, labor, great. We'll give you just a few more seconds on this one. Love seeing all these answers coming in. All right. Oh, we're gonna wait a few more. It's still popping up. Oh, I'll cut you off. Sorry. All right, and then this one is regarding succession planning. So thinking about yourself or your family's operation, share with us which category most relates to you. I'm a young producer who is entering the business or transitioning into an operation. I do not have a succession plan. I'm in the process of finalizing a succession plan. I have a succession plan. I plan to exit the livestock industry and disperse, or this is not applicable to me. Lots of young producers in the room. Looks like second place is currently in the process of succession planning. Right. 5 more seconds to get your answer in. Excellent. And let's move on to our last one. This is a drag and drop. So for those of you with your touch screen, you'll have to pick the answers and slide them up to the top. Of the 5 areas that you just heard Turk present on that the Montana Stock Growers has identified, please rank the most important to the least important in your eyes, one being the most important. So is it a favorable tax climate, improving government programs, minimizing barriers for young producers, labor challenges, or the need for an industry mentorship program? Ooh, minimizing barriers and tax climate keep flipping back and forth. Excellent. Well, while you get those last few submissions submitted, don't close out of that browser. What we plan to do is we have 2 wrap-up questions at the end of this evening. Once you've had a chance to listen to everybody's thoughts and feedbacks, you might get some new ideas, or your thoughts may change a little bit, so we'll have 2 wrap-up questions. But at this time, we want to move into our open comment period for everyone. So just a few reminders and housekeeping. We have set up a stand right over here down the stairs, and we ask if you would like to make comments to head that way. That will allow us to be a little more efficient and not have to run a mic around the seats. Before you make your comment, we also ask that you say your name and your where you may be from. And then just a friendly reminder that we are working towards solutions and ideas where we can find consensus and focusing on where we can find producer profitability within our industry. So we're going to hit those first 5 topics first. We'll open it up for each topic and then do, like I mentioned, an open mic segment at the end on additional topics that might be on your mind. So let's talk about tax first. We all know that in 2025, the current limits regarding the death tax will be sunsetting, and there is a need for us to either keep limits where they're at, or even better, eliminate the death tax altogether. So I would invite anyone that has thoughts regarding taxes, tax climate, or any ideas within that category to come up to the mic and share your thoughts, and we will continue until we run out of speakers. So don't be shy. Rusty Ellis.
As we discussed,
Can you make sure you talk into the mic, because those online will be
I
able to hear you then.
suppose I've been involved in this process for 2.5 years. Some of the things that continue to come up are taxes, and it doesn't matter whether we're in production agriculture or any business on Main Street, we all face the same load. And frankly, this death tax is, in my mind at least, incredibly hypocritical. They've already taken a big chunk of this money to start with, and now they want a second bite of the same apple. They tell us, we investigated through different accounting services, Boise and Washington, that we're not going to be able to rid ourselves of the death tax nationwide. But there may be a carve out for agriculture, and it seems to me that in this election year, we have a real opportunity to put some pressure on to do that. And if there was one good thing that came out of COVID, it's that these supermarkets got a little short of stuff on the shelves. And we have some allies, they tell us, in places that we have not had them before. And frankly, this would be a great time to get on one message and try to protect the people that feed the country. I think we have an opportunity to do that now, and I'm afraid the window is pretty short. I would push pretty hard to fix not only the death tax, but a lot of this tax situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Don't be shy. You know, when we think of taxes, we think of federal taxes the majority of the time. Obviously, the death tax is one of the top issues that we think of, but also kind of keep in mind from a state perspective, we've seen this last legislative session, multiple bills come in trying to fix how maybe land going out of production agriculture into trophy ranches or ranches that aren't utilizing the land like it used to be. Those issues are being looked at. So also share with us thoughts from a state perspective on any ideas that you may have. Sure.
So Rayleigh, I just wanted to, so after we had our producer profitability program there at the annual convention, we got some good comments afterwards. I just wanted to share some of those thoughts. And there was two producers that came up, and this says, is there a way that if we could create some sort of tax incentive to be able to get this land into other people's hands? And other people, is that a new producer, or is that your children? And really started talking about different ideas there. So the reason I'm just sharing that is just, do you all have different ideas of how we could look at the tax code, if that's with capital gains, or if that, like Ray Lee was already talking about, where we're already trying to look at the classification of land. Because one thing that really came up in those working groups is, we all, So we all made it through the COVID years, and we found out that we're essential. And so we need someone to have to feed the gap, right? And so when we're essential, it really means that we have to continue to produce. And because we cannot not take care of our livestock. And this livestock is going into a food system that's taking care of the country. And this country needs us. Really, we even got it down to, this is really a national security issue. Because if we don't have producers wanting to come back and produce, where are we going to be in 20 years or 50 years? And Joe always brings this up really well. Just, we have to be able to replace ourselves, and someone's got to want to replace us. And when we get down to the word essential, and we're essential producers, should that mean something? Should that mean something that essential producer should have maybe favorable access to that land, because they're going to keep it in agricultural production? And is that through the tax code? I don't know. That was a little bit just the topic. But I just wanted, I don't know if we had the solution. But the fact is we have to keep the land in ag production. And is that through tax code? I don't know. That's some small. But the bottom line is we all know, just like Brady said, Montana is just one of them. Guys in California, we're talking that they're getting replaced with houses, these ranches are getting bought up, and cows aren't going back out. You know, the first thing I heard when a big ranch got sold here just a few years ago, they're managing it for elk. And so there aren't going to be any cows coming through. So where does that leave us? We want to buy the neighbor here. And we're going to be an essential producer. And I just think it needs to be a topic to make sure we talk about, and I think more ideas in that area would be good.
Yeah, if you'd share your name, that would be great.
My name's Joe Garvins. No, I'm Brad Crosby, and I think it's important that lawmakers understand that for a lot of ranchers, our ranch is the only retirement we have, and we treat it like an IRA, and it should be taxed as such. And in other words, once we reach a certain age,
No, you can keep going, sorry.
yeah, sorry. You can just cut me off if I say something wrong. But once we reach a certain age, I think we ought to be able to draw on that. Obviously, our preference, but
our preference by virtue of what we do is to sell to our kids first or another rancher second. I don't think we should try to limit people in the way that they market their retirement, they liquidate their retirement. But I do think that at a certain age they ought to be able to draw on their retirement. And so I think that real estate, especially in the ag sector, should be treated as and taxed as an IRA. And in other words, being able to draw on that, which means that we can sell it to our kids, or the neighbor kid, nephew, whoever, for less than we would otherwise sell it. It's not that
Yeah, just keep, yeah, hold on.
It is on.
You guys go ahead and just keep talking. I can fix it for you.
Okay, very good. I think we'll pass this around, but I think the one thing we have to keep in mind on the death tax, and there's quite a few families in here. I know Fred's family's going through it right now. Our family's going through it right now, and for a lot of people, for a lot of people right now within production agriculture, irregardless if you're on the fiber side or the protein side, a lot of the death tax,
Anyway, but irregardless of which group we belong to, who we're affiliated with, we need to convey to our state and national groups that, hey, let's go into these offices in DC and let's all have the same number one and the same number two. We might have our differences and we may throw our rocks at each other over things, and I'm not saying that's bad. I think that's healthy. But right now, we have got to come together, and we got to go in those offices. And if we all say, maybe we have our different number ones, but for God's sakes, let's come together with the same number two. Let's come together and say, hey, we all agree on this. And this is a huge difference. This is gonna wipe out some family generational farms if we don't at least keep our exemption high at the ag level. To me, I think any land used for ag production should be exempt. If they want us to raise the highest quality, safest food product in the world, that might be one of the perks we get, because there's not a lot of other perks in this thing. And as far as our family goes, we'd be $16 million ahead right now. My mom's 94 years old. We told her she's gonna have to live to be 120 so we can get dad paid off. That's what a lot of us are gonna face, especially if this thing drops to 5 to 10 million, where it involves everybody in this room. That's what we need. That's worth fighting for. That makes a huge difference for these young guys that are gonna come home. If they've got a $10 million tax liability, the IRS is just, they're so lenient, they give you 14 years to pay for it. Whoopty-doopty. What young guy in the world, you can't afford to inherit a place? That's what, to me, in all of these different groups that we went into, folks, this is the one thing that we all have common ground on. This is the one thing that affects everybody in this room. Maybe not now with the $26.5 million exemption, but it's going to affect everybody in this room if it goes to a $5 million exemption. So I know Fred Foreman. I really appreciate Fred coming in. He's one of the really good families there is in this part of the world. And I know he's going through it, and I'd be really interested to see what he had to say about something like that, because I know he's going through it as well. You have to come down here, Fred.
Bear with me, my legs are.
That's all right.
I want to echo everything Joe just said. It is bullshit what's happened to my dad's.
You're on the airways, Fred.
I don't care. I'm at the age where I don't care. It is ridiculous what they're doing. My dad was 95 and a half, and it is crazy what the government's taking, that he worked his ass off for. And they are hammering his estate. And anyway, on a different subject, something that we all need to be aware of right now is bonus depreciation. And it is phasing out, and it is something that everybody in this room has got to get a hold of their elected officials and say, you've got to get it going again. Because my main challenge in this business is cash flow. And bonus depreciation, Trump put it in, and if you guys aren't aware of it, it really preserves cash flow. And for capital expenditures, tractors, bread heifers, we've been able to write off 100% of them in the existing year. Well, this year it's going to 80%. Next year it's going to 60. They're phasing it out. And it's going to hit you right in the water. And we have got to get that back to 100%. And I read that Speaker Johnson has gotten in his latest deal to reinstitute it. But I mean, you guys know as well as I do, nothing happens quick in Washington, and we need it quick. Because I've only been in this business 25 years. And before that, I was in the car business for 25 years. And the main thing about this business that I struggle with every year is cash flow. Everybody is attacking our cash. Property taxes, property insurance, all kinds of crazy capital inputs going through the roof. We've got no control over. But we do have to get our elected officials to help us keep the bonus depreciation in place. Because, I mean, if you can write off, I bought a tractor for $100,000. You write that sucker off, that helps right now. All right. Anyway, this estate tax, Joe said it better than I could. If we don't get it fixed, it's going to wipe a lot of people out and hurt them bad. But as far as right now, my soapbox is get the bonus depreciation back. Get it back now, not 5 years from now. That's what it's just being redundant. Anything that affects your cash, we need help preserving. I don't know about you guys, but every year, property insurance just goes up and up and up. And I keep going up on the deductibles, reducing the coverage. One of these years is going to bite me in the ass. Any help we can get, when you see somebody, this is, I'll be honest with you, this is a tough damn business. I'm thankful that I stayed in the car business. Because it funds this business. Thank you guys. Joe, thanks for putting this on too.
Thanks so much. And if you've only been in the business 25 years, I think you qualify as a young farmer or a young rancher. All right, we have kind of hit our time allotment for our discussion around taxes, unless somebody has any final comments. And we now want to kind of move on to government program. Oh, Fred, come on down. Apologize for the technical change up.
Thank you. I'm Fred Wacker from Miles City, rancher, family ranching operation. And I hope that we can at least save what we've had in the past, and that we can get the big exemption that we've had and it doesn't drop. If we can get that done, that's a milestone. I have always had another thought about it, and that is one of our things that we talk about is to get young people into ranching. And if we want to do that, then the seller and the buyer have to do something. And the seller needs to have an advantage to sell to someone young or to carry it on to a family. And if they follow that plan, and if they come along with a plan that says that your inheritance tax or your income tax or your bonus depreciation is going to work better and be larger or smaller for you, whichever is the best way, that you can take and you take advantage of that, because you're selling this place to a family member, or you're selling this place to some young couple or young people in order to keep people in A. I think we need to take a look, because talking with a lot of politicians, there's a lot of them saying, well, we owe $37 trillion. We have to gather up tax money. And so with that thought, we might be better off to ask for some benefits rather than wiping out taxes if they don't listen to us as far as wiping taxes out. So I still think that we need to take a look and have an advantage for the young people and for people that are entering farming and ranching. And they're doing ranching. They're not raising elk, they're not raising deer, they're ranching and they're farming. And I think that's one of the things that we ought to think about and see if we can fit that in. It might please the politicians. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fred. All right, let's move on to government programs. And obviously, there are a magnitude of government programs that, your operations can utilize. But there's a lot of things within those government programs that are currently not working or need tweaks. One of the most recent conversations that we've seen a lot of conversations around is LRP and some adjustments or tweaks that need to be done within that program. So at this time, if you have thoughts around government programs, what's working, what's not working, what maybe needs to be developed, we would love to hear from you. Oh, Joe, yeah.
You've got a better handle on LRP than frankly 99% of people. And the information that you can relay here.
Joe Cabanda, Columbus, Montana. I have been part of the cattle business for my entire life and career. And as many of you know, like in recent years, helping cattle owners, like a lot of you are, to basically de-risk the financial outcomes of owning cattle. Unfortunately, like our world increasingly is, let me just say it, like out of control, and things unlike cattle supply and like beef consumers, the amount of them affect our cattle markets. And so usually those things that we remember that affect our cattle markets affect them negatively. And so the kind of work that I've put my life into the last couple of years has been to help people to understand a program that helps them in a crazy volatile world that they raise cattle in and would like to continue to raise cattle in, to be able to do that with financial success, with a tool that's out there. And my career has spanned a couple of decades, and my exposure to like financial risk management, price risk management, start with the traditional tools that a lot of you are familiar with that come out of Chicago. And I grew up here, and in general, talking with cattlemen in Montana, like they don't use those tools. And it's always, when I went off to other places to help other cattlemen manage price risk, I always came home and thought, man, well, why don't cattlemen use those tools? Because they're very effective. And I've really come to the realization that in general, why don't they use them is because the objections or the hurdles to using those traditional tools are too high. They're unovercomable. So that brings you to LRP. Well, why is that one any better? Well, because it allows cattle producers to overcome those barriers and those hurdles to managing price risk, unlike what those traditional tools are out there. And, the reality of life, whether it's cattle production or anything, is like, it's risky. Like, we just experienced it here, right? Like, good thing we're at a sale barn, right? So that we have a backup mic. It's risk management. Well done. we all want the cattle market to go up, and we hope it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And as the gentleman just alluded to, when it doesn't, it puts us in a cash flow bind because there's so much cash and capital tied up in owning cattle and producing them. And one of the, my political stripes are not for government programs, but this is, like, there are some things that maybe, and I'm gonna be one to admit, like, maybe we'll look back 10 years from now and say, like, we should have let the free market provide this solution. But there are some things that don't have a solution, and, you know, I've not been in the business as long as some of you, but for 20 years in Montana, like, there's not been a solution provided by the free market that doesn't have too high of objections or barriers for people to manage price risk. We're talking about the component of the cattle equation, the revenue side. That's what LRP is for price. That's very, very significant and important. So what did the government do a couple years ago? Why did I get involved? Like, they removed a lot of the barriers to a program that they used to have, all the way back to 2003. And the most significant thing that they did, because of the huge cash requirement it takes to own and raise cattle, you know, subsidy aside, like, yes, they make it cheaper than the alternative out there. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing, and it's a small subsidy, but they do it the same way in bonus depreciation. They allow you to buy something that you don't have to pay for at the beginning. So they allow you to basically use your social security number or your EIN as credit that you're going to pay for this insurance when you sell the cattle at the end. That's the most important feature change to LRP, because it frees up cash flow. It removes that barrier that I've seen stop people dead in their tracks with traditional tools in the past in Chicago, because it's like, I need that. What do I need to do next? Send me $10,000 to open a brokerage account. It doesn't happen. It's dead in the tracks. So that's the most important thing that they've allowed to do there. And I can just testify to, like, having experienced and used this on my own cattle ownership, but then just, you know, God's grace in allowing me to share that risk management experience that I've had back here at home with a lot of Montana cattlemen. Like, this is really important. It's like, one of my main words up there about producer profitability was financial stability. And this is a key thing that can be used. And like I said, I'm not for government programs, but this government program solves what I think over the years that I've been involved is a problem that the market is not figuring out, so that cattlemen can have financial stability around their future cattle prices.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on.
Thanks, Joe. I think we have our LRP expert we can tap into. The next Joe's up.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Joe said, just so I think everybody understands where the LRP, in my opinion, isn't my own opinion, but I think the LRP is tailor-made for the cow-calf industry. It maybe not be so tailor-made for some of us that forward contract and buy these cattle out front, but I think if they make just a couple of changes to the LRP, I mean, one of the main things that we've all talked about is, how do we make access to capital? How do we make it easier for access to capital for those of us in this industry? This is one real true way we can do it, in my opinion. I mean, we got some bankers here. They know way more than me, but this reduces risk. This does not, you don't lay in bed at night and try to figure out, how am I going to come up with $1 million margin call? There's no margin involved. It gives you a base. There's nothing to the top side. It doesn't alleviate any of that. What the real hindrance with the LRPs, in my opinion, is, and I think that's what we need to talk about, is how do we change it? How do we make it so it's more accessible to those of us sitting in this room? Number one is we need to make it more affordable. Number two, we need to make it to where it's more accessible. And a lot of us, how do we do that? We do that by, to me, there's two simple changes that we have the RMA do. The day you should be able to lay an LRP off on these cattle, the day you assume price risk. not the day you assume physical possession. So, which is no big deal for a cow-calf guy. Huge deal for those of us that buy background gives on these videos. Huge for these farmer feeders, because basically they're useless to our family in the summer when we're buying cattle on the videos. You're buying them in June and July, and we can't get any risk protection with an LRP until we take physical possession in them in October. Historically, the high on the feeder board, on the Chicago feeder board, it is in June, July, August. And we're buying them then, so they force us to go there and make the margin calls if we want any risk management. And the only time we can lay them off is when we take possession of these cattle in October, November, when that is the historic low. So there's a pretty easy fix there. I think if all of our industry groups came together and says, hey, let's just make this change. Let's go make this to where the day you assume price risk is the day you can lay it off. The day you have no more price risk is the day that that contract terminates. The other one is to make it more affordable is when you look at the federal crop insurance. Federal government subsidizes the federal crop insurance to the tune of about 60–65%. The federal government subsidizes these puts for these LRPs to the tune of 25–30%, maybe 40%. So why do our neighbors growing crops get such a much better deal than we do? Well, why can't we be on an equal playing field? Why can't we get the same 60%? It would make it way more affordable. And the big thing, I thought it was really interesting looking at this thing, because the improved government programs would be involved in the government programs. Number 4 on the list. When we were having these focus group meetings around the country and here, if you would have, at the very beginning of the meeting, there's a lot of people in this room who didn't want to talk about it. No way are we going to have the government involved in the cattle business. Well, guess what? I think Joe Cavanda said it the best at one of those meetings. He said, that train left the station and it's not coming home. The government is involved. But to me, and I always look up because I wonder if my father's going to throw a rock at me. But to me, the solution is not saying we don't want the government involved. No way, we're not going to have nothing to do with it and walk away and just come up. If anybody in this room can come up with a better solution, bring it forward. I'm all in. I don't want them involved. I want to go home and take a shower every time I talk about it. But maybe there's not another solution. Maybe we do have to be involved in that. And really what clicked the light switch on for me in that discussion is I'm talking to a gal in California, a big ag accountant in California. She just retired, 6 years into it. And I never realized she's in the Angus business as well, but I didn't realize she was an accountant. But she said, I had big accounts. I had big dairy accounts. I had big farming accounts, row crop, grain, pistachios, nuts. I had big cow-calf, big and small cow-calf operators, stocker operators. And she said, did you know the federal government subsidizes the farming side of agriculture? The tune of about $12.5 billion a year, she said, with a capital B. They subsidize the livestock side of this thing to the tune of just under $400 million with a little m. So she says, how do my cow-calf guys? And yeah, and like she said, the bulk of that, just under $400 million on the livestock side, just about all of it goes to the dairy lobby for their milk program. So she says, how do my cow-calf guys, how do my stocker guys, how do they go into the local bank and have the same equal access to capital? How do they go up the road and have the same access to land to grow roughage when their neighbors have such a head start? I'm not saying we knock them out, but I'm saying we need to get on an equal and fair playing field. If we're gonna compete for this land to either sell grass or grow roughage, then we gotta have that same equal access to capital. We have to have that same equal access to land. And once we started bringing all this up, guess what? Then that, from number 5 to number 4, once you let it all set in, there's a lot of you are going to say, this guy's nuts. But you're going to go home tonight, you're going to ride around the tractor, and you're going to feed, and you're going to get thinking about this, and I can almost guarantee you that you're going to come around if you're real serious about finding a solution. And there's a lot of us in this room, myself included, that was totally against this. But there's, our family, my dad, spent millions of his own money taking on some of these causes, trying to sue people, trying to get all this done. And to me, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's what we as an industry have done for the last 70 years. Maybe we need to try to come together. Maybe we need to unify around some of these deals like the death tax, some of these deals like let's make this LRP contract better. If we want to make equal access or access to capital better for not only young people, but for all of us, let's make the contract better. Let's not throw darts at it. So.
Thanks, Joe. And for those of us who actually do like the Chicago products, one of the problems we have, and you mentioned it, Joe, is laying awake at night, wondering how we're going to make $1 million margin call. And the reason that's a problem is we don't have the ability to finance a margin call. And I have said this before, but I believe that we are in a crisis similar to the 80s when it comes to access to capital. And the reason we are there is regulators, as the Fed lowered interest rates after the financial crisis, regulators took it right back because they made it harder and harder for banks to lend money, especially to ranches. And small banks, regional banks have gotten to the point where they really don't want to lend to ranches anymore. They don't want to lend to cattlemen anymore because it's too much risk for too much work. And because they get scrutinized with a magnifying glass every time a regulator comes into their bank. And one way that we can offset that is to lobby the government or lobby the Treasury to guarantee, or at least not penalize, small regional banks for offering margin accounts to people who actually manage their risk using the futures and options in Chicago. And a lot of banks are getting guarantees on their loans because they want because if they get a guarantee, only 10% of the account supports their asset base. If we could get something like that for margin-based accounts, then maybe we get banks willing to lend to us to actually manage our price risk, which is what we're supposed to be doing, which would be an alternative or maybe an addition to an increase in the subsidy for LRP for those who prefer not to use Chicago. But that's another idea.
Great, thank you. All right,
we can kind of keep with government programs, but also want to move into our next category. And that focuses a little bit more on young producers and how we can potentially eliminate barriers for entry for young producers. If you recall, when we talked about it earlier tonight, there were quite a few of you in this room who identified as a young producer kind of transitioning into an operation or taking over the family operation. So we'd love to hear from all of you on things that the industry can do to kind of eliminate barriers and make it a bit easier for you to be successful in your operations.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Hollenbeck, a local producer here, and bringing in two sons into the young producer realm, one on the ranch and one at our meat packing facility in Forsyth. And when it comes to this young producer situation, Mother and I are fighting the tax deal to get the ranch into one's hands and fighting the cash flow deal to get the other project viable too. But I think on the land side of it and the farm program side of it, we are definitely out of balance with the farmer and the subsidy deal. And our numbers keep shrinking. Everybody's been referenced to how our numbers are shrinking of landowners and farmers and ranchers. And if we could class this land and we were subsidized off of the class of our ag land, then it would free the markets up to be the markets. If we got our subsidy to produce food, and it wasn't classed as to which food, or which food group, whether it was a grain or a animal product, a hog, a chicken, sheep, cattle, whatever, then the land gets the subsidy, and the land gets the break from the tax burdens to stay in ag production. Then we get our national security. We got free markets, and we got a better go at the whole deal if we could gravitate that direction. But if we look from an overview of this whole deal, there's three groups that aren't here tonight, and we got them in our communities. The Amish aren't here, the Hutterites aren't here, and corporate America that we're selling all of our grain goods to, all of our meat products to, they're not represented here tonight. They're all profitable. They don't need to have this meeting tonight. So we got to learn something, looking over our shoulder at how they're doing business. And they don't have this worry that we're all stressed with tonight. The Hoots have a way of transitioning them colonies to the next generation, as does corporate America. The Amish are way simpler, and they don't worry about any of the problems we got. Well, in Montana here right now, in the meat business, in the beef business, we're processing 2% of the cattle we're producing. The population we have, we need 15% of the cattle for our own consumption, and we're only processing 2%. But between government regulations, overburdens, lack of government employees for inspectors and that sort of thing, we can't even grow that thing to where it's sustainable because of lack of government on one arm and too much of government in the other arm. And so them are some of the things that are going to burden this next generation, that as we push this land and these businesses down to the next generation or lift them up to the next generation, we're really going to have to think about from an overview point. And I hope that my comments have triggered some thought process. Certainly, they're deep subjects that don't have a real easy solution, but I want to recognize Jim Stamfel and myself. We sit on the advocacy committee for the Beartooth Stock Association. And as we advocate for the stock growers in Stillwater and Carbon counties, these are the things that we meet about to try to come to some resolution and be futuristic in our thinking that we can address. But the first thing we need to do to address as beef producers and meat producers, whether it's our lamb, we're also sheep producers,
is we got way too much government regulation on one hand and not near enough on the other hand in the meat business. But thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'd invite anybody else to hop up. And if you want to make some comments, I just invite you to start making your way up so we can maybe make the transition a little easier. So we have Ian coming our way.
Yeah, my name is Ian Glennie. I'm from Judith Gap. Just returned back to my family's farm and ranch about 4 years ago. My family is in a position where they're not of the age to be able to retire, and I don't want to be living off of them and being a burden to them. So I've been trying to start my own deal and diversify a little bit. Well, like we saw on the board, that's access to land and capital for somebody my age with nothing backing me is very, very hard to do. I don't know what the outcome for that is or how we change that, but just as an example, when we were talking about some government stuff, I finally, after 4 years of looking, had somebody come to me and said they had a little grass available. So I pursued that, wanted to start trying to do my own thing, and I couldn't make it pencil on the cow end of things. I knew I wouldn't be able to get the capital to buy the cows and then have to find the hay base and equipment and everything else. It just wasn't feasible. So I am fortunate we've already got a line of farm equipment, and it penciled because of federal crop to go break it up. So that's what I'm gonna do, because I finally got access to the land. But because of the federal crop, I'm able to go do that, but I'm pulling this grass out to farm it because I can go to my banker and say, hey, here's the numbers, here they are. I can't do that on the cattle end of things. I'd much rather take cattle over to this deal. It suits cattle better, but I can't go to the banker and show how it'll pencil because there's no help or proven numbers, I guess. Another thing that I think could be improved in some way, shape, or form is the young farmer and rancher loan through the government. Last time I checked, it was $600,000, which most of us in here know that that's not a lot to get started. You might be able to tie up some land with that, but how are you going to be able to? You can probably get one or the other. You can tie up some cows or you can tie up some land. $600,000 isn't going to get you without a town job or anything else. It's not going to get you very far as a young producer. So I don't know what that looks like. Maybe bumping it to $1 million. That can get you a little further, or maybe have one specifically for livestock and have one specifically for land, so you have access to a couple different ones, not just one. But you got to try and split between land and livestock. Just spitballing some things I have, some thoughts I have on the tractor. And the other thing is, if you've been a producer for 10 years, you're not able to access that anymore. So I've been leasing some ground, farm ground, and through the government it says I've been a producer for 10 years. Now, that was kind of a family deal, but I don't have access to that anymore. I don't have that access to that capital because of the 10 years. I've never tapped into it because the opportunity to purchase land or capital within those 10 years, or land or livestock had never been available in that time. But because I'd been a producer for 10 years, leasing some family farm ground, I'm not able to access that anymore. So just some things to think about. My biggest threat is the access to the land and the capital at this point. And that's about all I've got.
All right, thanks, Ian. Any other thoughts from our young producers in the crowd or our seasoned producers? All right, I know labor was a definitely put that up on the board as we kind of began our conversation. So I'll open it up now for labor. After that, we'll kind of open it up for all the other thoughts and comments. But from a labor perspective, we'd love to hear some of the challenges that you're facing, whether it's relating to the H-2A program or things in general, such as just workforce training.
Thank you again. Because of our involvement in the sheep industry, we jumped on this H-2A labor deal 10, 15 years ago. And or I guess I also sat on the board of Mountain Plains Ag Service, which is the employer or the agency that brings these Peruvians in from Peru and stuff. And it's an agency down in Casper, Wyoming that bring them in. And as far as labor goes, these H-2A workers for us and for our sheep and our ranching operation are the real deal. We really are, but I know that there's several of you in here that are using some South Africans, and they certainly are good workers. But along that line, if there's anything the organizations can lobby for, is to get us that 12-month access to these guys versus 10-month seasonal worker. Our sheep herder exemption, we can keep those guys 32 months before we have to send them back. But for the livestock worker and the farm worker, they're considered seasonal, so they'll only let you have them for 10 months. So it really disrupts the flow of your operation when you lose them guys for that 2 months. So any of you people that have the opportunity to lobby for us producers, it's to get that 12 months. And then, and then also widen it out. I wish that we could bring them H-2A workers for our meat processing plant. It would really, really help us out in that respect, but I don't know whether we'll ever get that. We're letting them in free, but we won't let them in documented for some reason. And along that line, the Department of Labor is really pushing back on us now. And from when we started the program, and I don't know, Eve, when you remember what year we first got into it, but 15 years ago or so, but they've tripled their wages. And then 15 years or so, they've tripled the wages on us. So that Department of Labor is really pushing on us on that deal. But if anybody has any questions about H-2A and stuff, we bring a lot of them in the country. I think the agency that I sit on the board on, we bring about 2,800 a year in. So it's a lot of workers that we bring in, and they're the real deal. I mean, I do believe in the program, and I don't know how we're gonna get away from this. If we lost our H-2A workers, our operation would change fast in less than 2 weeks. It would be done.
Thanks, Mike.
Corey Schultz, I manage the public auction yards, and I guess on behalf of the H-2A workers, I think it's crap that we don't qualify as a stockyards for H-2A. I think it's something that should definitely be looked at. I don't know if you've seen our workforce, but thank God we come from a big family, and we've got a lot of family out there that work involvement. But again, H-2A would sure help us a lot. And it's nothing to pay $17, $18, $19 an hour to anybody that walks in off the street just to get them to work. And I've tried to fight with LMA, but they don't seem to get anywhere with this. So we could use some help from the stock growers and any other producer organization to help us. I don't even know how we qualify. We qualify as an H-2B right now, and you can't get them because they all go landscaping right now. So.
I knew he was gonna come up on that. Just to add to that, the H-2A labor is fantastic. I mean, we still try to hire domestic workers, but it's getting to the point where we're either gonna sell some ranches or we're gonna have to, we have a lot of South Africans, but 13, 14 of them, and I like them. They're not cheap, but I like them. Show up every day and they wanna work, but it's a major problem around these auction markets in America where shoot, I got them just because I thought we were gonna be able to bring them in here and use them for help on sale day. Well, it was totally against the law to do that. And how we don't qualify for ag labor at an auction market is beyond me, but we don't. We're under the same rules as a packing house. And I've told, I've brought this up many times in our LMA meetings, that this is one place I think that we could cooperate. We could join with the packing industry, the big corporates, as far as trying to get together and get them some H-2A labor, get us some H-2A labor where it's way more affordable, and maybe work together with them instead of, and show them that we mean business, and maybe they'll come on the other side and use their lobbying power to come together, and their force in DC come together to help us on the estate tax, that maybe some of these other problems that we have for these cow-calf people, maybe we get their help, if we show them that maybe we're gonna step forward and help you a little if you help us. And because really, folks, I think they're finding out right now, in the kind of market we're in right now, they need us just as bad as we need them. I'm not saying we're on the exact same team. We're sellers of grass, they're sellers of meat, but they need us, and we need them. And I think through this H-2A labor, if we could work together to come together and not only improve it for those of us on these ranches, but maybe ask them that we'll help you trying to get the H-2B labor for these auction markets and the packing houses. Could you help us get this estate thing right, to where we have some producers for you people, so we can produce the big just keep getting bigger. This idea of vertical integration, folks, great idea for the corporates, for the federal government to audit. It is a horrible idea for those of us in this room, for those of us in rural America, for those of us that own these places like this. We need small town America. We need small town independent cattle feeders. We need small, these people that have from 12 head of cows to 500 head of cows, and we're losing. We are losing. And a lot of it's because of labor. A lot of it is because of access to capital, access to land, just what we're talking about here today. And to me, I would hope we can kind of come together and go back to our different state affiliates and go to their national conventions, and from a grassroots level, let's come at them with some common ground on what we've been talking about here. But I really think the labor issue, the H-2B, getting them to H-2A, is a real avenue to maybe prove to the packing industry that maybe we're not gonna throw darts at you all the time. There's sometimes we need to. I'm not saying we don't need to keep them accountable. I've been right in the fight with them. But there's times we might need them on our team because they need us just as bad as we need them.
All right. I'm not seeing anyone else checking up, so this time.
Jim will say something. Brandon, one thing on that labor deal. If you're a member of a co-op where Joe owns the inception of the cap, it comes through this ring, his livestock goes through it, and his plant, and the co-op will qualify for labor all the way through. So once you break that chain of co-op, then you need that ability to have that labor. That eliminates a lot of us who never capitalize on the labor market that would be possible. So it benefits that people vertical integration and it penalizes the business.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm Caleb Scott. We have a ranch and a small packing plant. Since we've been in the packing industry, we've toured a lot of packing plants, and we've got to know a lot of people in that industry. I don't feel like they want H-2Bs or H-2As, because it looks like to me, most workers are in there undocumented. And so for me, or us, it looks like we're having a heck of a time competing with them because they don't want competition. And for us, it's like trying to hire people the right way, trying to do it the legal way. They've got us in a jam.
And so, I mean, you see all these people coming across our border, most of them are getting a job somewhere. And I think the people that want to handle it in an honorable way are having a hard time competing. Now you got people you're paying 12 to 15 bucks an hour, there's no documentation, you know, and also that money's not going back into the taxes and everything else. It's tough for us to compete with that. That's the only thing I'd see on that. That's all I have to say about that.
Great, thank you. All right.
I just like to add on a little bit of that as well. I was working down in California for quite a few years ago, business down there, and we would try to hire citizens to work, and there's minimum wage, you had to pay, and healthcare, et cetera. And then our competition would go out and hire illegals, and it basically put us out of business after 2 years. I think you're seeing the same thing around here. You got we have a couple of H-2A workers, and they're tremendous. They were paying $2.62 an hour right now. You got to supply them with a place to live, and a vehicle, et cetera. But they are really good workers. But right now, with the amount of illegals that are coming into this country, it's political, but they'll probably work for less, and they're also getting a lot of those same people on the SNAP program. If they claim asylum, they're getting the government check, it's SNAP. And so that's what's happening. And I think it just makes that much more difficult. So I kind of agree with what was just said, that I don't think a lot of the factors going to really want that, but I think we need to throw something close to that.
All right, so let's just move to kind of wrapping up the evening. We've been here for about an hour and 45 minutes, and really want to just open the floor up to any other thoughts, topics, ideas that are floating around in your mind as you're driving down the road or driving your tractor or hearing Joe Goggins on podcasts talking about user profitability. So open it up to anyone, and we'll kind of keep it open for a bit longer and then wrap it up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Carl DeGrees, Roberts. So I'd like to put this on. I had sold calves here last Friday. I didn't know if this happened. So, I mean, they did a little advertising where the Ag Network had a catch on there, but it's a good program. Thank you. I'd like to roll it back a little bit to Montana. I know we discussed national issues. And the question I'd like to pose to you, Randy, why do stop growers support SB 72 in the last legislative session? A bill that was going to create a permanent water court and probably open up the adjudication process again, which I was a young man when I filed my adjudication papers, and now I'm an old man, and it's still going on.
I guess I'm gonna have to pull the card for the evening. More than happy to talk to you offline about that, but I guess that doesn't necessarily follow. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily follow with respectfully. Yeah.
They have on that have private well and pump the water across state lands and use it on school trust land. And now they have turned around and filed a right on their water right on private land. It does affect producers.
I will follow up with you tomorrow, but.
Okay, please do.
Yep, we will do that.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
I just, I guess, a lot of conversations about unity, and we've heard a lot about the, stock growers and this side. I guess I'd like to know, U.S. cattlemen, how do we get involvement there? RCAP, how do we get that involved? How do we come together? So I guess I'd ask, I just want to know, like, how can we get this unity? I mean, it's supposed to be a safe space to talk about everything. I think we should hear about it. I want to know.
Thank you. I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA. So how do we get the unity? By definition, it means we'd have to come together on issues. And certain issues that we support were not the topic of today's discussion. But there are areas that we need to look at. For example, the biggest challenge to reducing taxes is that the government is constantly trying to increase revenues. How do we do that? For the sheep industry, they have the answer. Let's put tariffs on the imports, generate revenues that go in the U.S. Treasury. They would offset any tax reduction that agriculture needs. Novel idea, not necessarily. That's how this country was built decades ago. But the steel industry, aluminum industry, shrimp industry, sheep industry, they're all looking at this as a novel approach to rebuilding America's economy. And if we had those tariffs generating the revenues for the U.S. Treasury, we wouldn't have to be taxing individual citizens as high as we do today. That's one way that we can achieve unity, come up with a novel idea that the entire agricultural industry would support. What we have lost in the last 5 years, 107,000 independent cattle producers. This industry is shrinking fast. And there are areas, Joe mentioned vertical integration, kind of borderlines in the prohibited discussion items. But that's what our industry is facing, and we can look at examples of that. Look at your sister hog industry. There's 667,000 producers a little over a generation ago. We wiped out 9 out of 10 of them. Wiped out 8.9 out of 10 dairy producers. Wiped out 3 sheep producers. Much more if you look at sheep producers with a herd or a flock of 100 head. So we do need to come up with some issues that, as an industry, we can all support. And I don't know what those all are. Our member policy supports the repeal of the death tax. Not a high priority, as you indicated. But what is a high priority is, why do we need LRP? It's because the market isn't working. I think the unity is that we need to begin focusing on the market. Consumers are paying record prices for beef. The spread between the retail price of beef and your cattle prices is the widest in the history of your industry. Why is that? We need to focus on where the problem is and dig into it, and not be afraid to talk about it. Fed cattle markets. These are issues that if we don't address, I can predict the future. Because over the last 40 years, we've lost over half of all cattle producers. Downward trend for 40 years. It wasn't because of the drought. For the last 40 years, we've wiped out 78% of all of our independent feedlots. Not because of drought. We didn't have drought for 40 years. In the last 40 years, we reduced our mother cow herd by 8 million cows. Not because of drought. It's a long-term downward trajectory. An economist looks at that and says, we can predict the future. If you don't do anything different than what you're doing today, we can predict fewer cattle producers, smaller herd size, less marketing outlets, feedlots, auction yards. We better focus on the issues that are destroying this industry. And we haven't talked about those tonight. But I respect your topics. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just saying there are issues we need to get behind as an entire agricultural industry. And at some point, we should begin talking about those. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm hearing there's a chance that we can get together on estate taxes. All right, Jeff?
I had some knee surgery, so I'm not getting that old yet, although it starts creeping up on you, doesn't it? We were pretty young when we started doing all this stuff. Thank you, Rayleigh and Goggins for hosting this, John and Leslie and Turk. This is pretty neat to get a call for unity. And you do have to kind of focus it in on the issues. Leo, you told me it'd be a few years I'd work in DC, and it was since 2004. I don't know, my family liked you till you wrote me into that, but no, we got to come back, and as Leo knows better than anybody, you got to pick a few issues and work it out. And I think you guys have done a good job of that here this evening. And I'll wear a couple hats here. I was able to use that beginning farmers and ranchers loan in 2002 and always kept a set of cattle together, in addition to doing agriculture policy. So the topics you've talked about here tonight are very important, and I think we can get them moved on. So I'll just touch on a few of them. This summer we got together, and I'll just say it from the sense of unity, since that's the method and what we can get done, because you got to keep optimistic. If you want to get this next generation, you got to throw a little optimism out there. I know we're getting beat down, but keep the optimism. We all got together this summer, told the Secretary of Agriculture, this includes Farm Bureau, NCBA, RCAF, all of us, who said, knock it off with the Paraguayan imports. They moved forward anyway. And this week, we introduced a joint resolution disapproval. I think it's going to move forward. And I think that sends a message back to unity. So it's not on the issues list, but the unity topic is there. And so, Joe, when you brought everyone together, I think it proves that it's in the room and get along and whatnot. So that's a big part of it. I do think as you work through all this, I think the cattle contract needs to be addressed. What happened in December on that live cattle futures board, it hurt a lot of us, especially in this market, and it picked back up and all the rest. So I do think just how the board functions or dysfunctions, look, we sat in the rooms, we know it's too easy for a short right now, not for a long. And so we need to address it. And so I think as we look at these conversations, continue to look at that. And that's part of your blending it in a little bit. But I want to pull away from what we've talked about here. Obviously, the bonus depreciation, thank you so much. We need to bring that up. It's kind of funny how Washington works or doesn't work. They freak everyone out. Now, I'm very disappointed here on the estate tax, and those are getting beat up. I think our timeline is, I don't want to say perfect, but someone mentioned it. As we get closer to that, we need to get this in a consensus document as far as that estate tax. I think we have to get that knocked out. The bonus depreciation, Fred, that was good to bring up. So thank you. We'll bring that up in U.S. Cattlemen's. I think on LFP, again, we need those changes, absolutely. And Joe, you talked about it. And I think there's an opening. It was based on a pilot project, right? So we can make those changes. We're not going to get a farm bill done this year, folks. It'll be into next year. So now is the time. Your timing is perfect. So make these rounds, get this stuff consensus by this spring, this summer. Let's get it into a working document and make those changes. Those LFP changes can be done. That can be absolutely done. I gave you my word we can get that done. The H2A piece, I think it's tough, but I think if we start talking about it, this is the first time agriculture, livestock has gotten that much more involved. So I think all these things are doable. U.S. Cattlemen's, we're going to be here in the summer meeting, the latter part of July in conjunction with the Northern Video, and we've already talked about it. We invite this group to come right back, and you bet, we'll be there. We're going to stick to our guns on our issues that we see on the other side, but there's a need for unity. We're going to get after it. So thank you all. Just give a round of applause again to Stockhorse for making rounds. We really appreciate this. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jess. Any other final comments, thoughts? Quiet. Oh.
Come down there, or can you hear me?
Why don't you come on down? Sorry. Again, while Brad's kind of headed down this way, if you didn't feel comfortable chatting tonight or have ideas or thoughts, just want to remind you that mtbeef.org/profitability, there is that form that you can fill out and submit ideas and thoughts to as well. I encourage you to do that often and many times.
Well, I'm Brad Kraft, and my family's been west of Billings for years. And we were both in the dairy and the beef business. And back in '87, graduated from high school, I started to go to dairy meetings with my dad. There was 27 dairies from Park City to Belfry to Pompey's Pillar. There is not one left today. The only ones are, and it brings up a good point, I think Mike said, the only dairies around basically are the Hooterites because of the labor. And, you know, that was 30-some years ago. The way the beef deal's going, you can just see less producers. Everything in here said tonight, I don't think there's one disagreement from one end of this room to the other of what needs to be done. And I think the big question is, in my mind, after listening all night, is how. You're gonna have these meetings throughout the year. I've seen your schedule where you're gonna go. They're all gonna be just like this here. Everybody's gonna have the same comments, the same ideas. You're gonna get the same consensus. My biggest question is how you're gonna get it done. You know, is it Dane's office, Chester, whatever your flavor is, but how or who is gonna get to them guys and get something done? We can talk and we can talk. I've been different organizations throughout them. I serve on a couple other boards. It's just, there's always talk. Everybody's got the good ideas, but how? My big question is how. How are we gonna get to Danes? How are we gonna get to Tester? How are we gonna get to the president, you know, the governor? How are we gonna do that? That's where I see it. Everybody's got the same consensus. We know what needs to be done, but how are we gonna get it done?
I think you've asked the best question of the night. And I think the way we get this done is we go talk to our different groups that we're affiliated with, industry groups, and we come up with one or two things. To me, it's the easiest things right now that would make a big difference in my mind. This is only my opinion, but in my mind, the two things that make the biggest difference. The grassroots matter. People that put cattle through here, they are right. We need to have around the two things right now that I think we can really make a difference in. Is the estate tax.
Agreed, I'm going through that right now.
And the LRP. The LRP contract, we're more accessible to these people, where they can have access to capital and land. Those are the two things. Are they the most important? Maybe not. But there's something, one thing this industry needs people right now is a win. It's been a long time since the beef industry's had a win. We need a win. I think we can win at this.
I agree with everything, that, but my big question is how. Who's gonna go talk to things? I know there's, you know, we gotta unify. So after we get unified, okay, we all come up, we're all unified, then who's gonna take the lead, or who's gonna go talk to Danes, Chester? How are we gonna get this ball rolling?
One thing I have found out sitting on the national board of the LMA, the only thing the way we're gonna get this done is it's gotta start from the bottom up. You can't go invite the exec boards of these different groups together and expect them to do it, because they're not gonna do it unless they have policy. And the only way they're gonna create policy is if we start from the grassroots and go up. And that's really where the Montana Stock Growers has really got the head start, and they've been, the whole world has watched what's happened here in Montana. We've got California doing the same thing. We've got the Dakotas doing the same thing. We're gonna have Florida doing the same thing. We're gonna have Alabama doing the same thing. They're coming together from the bottom up, and if you go to these national boards and these national exec deals, regardless of which one it is, and you say, hey, we want this number one. We want this number one, and it gets back to right at the very beginning when I made the welcome, the same thing those dairy boys told us. The only way you're gonna get any of this done, folks, is you better get your story right. You better educate these policymakers on exactly why you deserve these perks. Why do you deserve this? You better educate them. We don't need to educate the consumer. We don't need to educate the people in our industry. We damn sure better educate the people like the Daneses of the world and the people that make policy for us, that really hit us in the hind pocket. And that would be my hope for these meetings as we go around, is what are the one or two things? We can't come at them with 14 different things. We can't come at them with 4 different things. In my mind, we come at them with 2, maybe 1. But this industry, everybody always says defense wins championships, and maybe it does, but every once in a while, you gotta put one in the hole. And this industry hasn't put one in the hole for quite a while. And that's really, we've been forced to play defense. There isn't an industry in the United States that's better at playing defense than the beef industry. We've been forced to, and we're darn good at it. But it's time to play a little offense. And let's unify around playing some offense.
One thing I want to bring up that Joe just repetitive is that we can unify and we can build. But what we have to do, absolutely have to do, is do a better job at telling Washington why we are here and why we matter. And they found that out with COVID. And if what we hear through our focus groups and that kind of stuff is true, we have an opportunity to get some support in places where historically agriculture hasn't had. And that's in big inner city blue demographics. And that's simply because they were afraid of how short what was on the shelves fell. Now we've got a shot here. And frankly, I think it ends in November. This is something we have to push and back. But we have to unify and we have to tell our story, why it matters. And there are a million gifted people that can handle social media. I am one of them. But frankly, every story matters. And it's remarkable the stories we heard. And if we can tell this, if we can wrap this package back, it'll be an easy step. We've just got to get together and wrap the damn thing up. And then sell.
What you're saying is we got to produce vegetables, not like them.
Well said, Mike. Taylor?
Thank you, Rusty. I'm going to take this just a little bit different tack here. First of all, to answer some of the questions that just came out, how do you influence it? How do you influence? You have to be a member. You got to join. You aren't going to go do it by yourself. You got to be part of something else. And most of us aren't in the industry. I mean, most of us in the industry aren't part of either of the three organizations that stood up here tonight. They're not engaged. They're not members. So how do you change it? You got to engage. You got to come to the table. You can't just sit back there and watch and not be part of it. So, because these things cost money. If you talk about telling our story, that takes money. You talk about changing federal policy or even changing state policy, that takes lobbyists, that takes money, that takes being there, paying somebody to go back there and talk to those guys in their office. That takes money. And if you're not part of this, if you're not part of an organization that's doing that, then you're not helping that. And one other point, we're all kind of beating around a little bit, but right now in this industry, and for the last 3 years, we're getting our head handed to us. We're just getting one thing after another that's making it more difficult for us to do business. Now the conversation is about maybe you shouldn't be on the public lands. Maybe the public lands should not have livestock on them. I mean, just imagine what that's going to mean to us. So we're in a desperate situation here. There's no question about that. But I'm so proud of you talking about profitability, because if we're profitable, we can do a lot of good things. So how do you do profit? Well, Coulter isn't here tonight, but he's the ag economist on our team, and he would say profit is only two things. Either increase income or you reduce expenses. That's only two ways you can fix profit, is increase income or reduce expenses. And most of the conversation tonight's been about reducing expenses. And the stock growers have done some good things. You reduced our business equipment tax last year. That was helpful. We've reduced some other taxes. You've reduced a little bit of regulation cost, but not much. We're not winning that battle, folks. The regulation cost is going up. And so we've talked tonight about what can we do to reduce expenses, reduce labor expenses, reduce tax expenses, or we're talking about, that's one way to help profit, is reduce expenses. But That's kind of a personal thing. You might look at our ranch and say, gosh, you're spending money you shouldn't spend there. Well, we think it might work, so we're investing in it. Or you might look at the Scots and say, man, you're going to invest in a packing plant? Is that the way? Well, I don't know. That's their choice, what they want to do with their feedlot or with their ranch. And that's all about, it's a personal thing, how you decide to spend your money. So expenses, it's a personal thing whether you want to be an H2A or whether you want to apply for a government program or whether you want to have a better tractor. That's a personal thing. But let me just talk about the other side of it. What are you doing as stock growers or U.S. cattlemen or RCAF to help raise the value of what we raise? To make our product, to bring us more income. Because we all in here sell what? Calves. So what is stock growers doing to raise the price of calves? Well, your directory would be one good example. You put that directory together and we can list our calves in there and you send that out to thousands of people. That would be a good example of something you're doing to help sell Montana calves. And here a couple of weeks ago, you took a booth down to that National Cattle Convention and you had Montana cattle in front of thousands of cattle producers who were walking by there. That's probably a good way to sell Montana calves. Because that's what we all sell. Whatever organization or not organization you're in, you sell Montana calves. And this is for the people that are watching online and probably they're not from Montana, some of them. We think our calves are better. It's not really because we have such great purebred producers here in our state, although we do have. It's partly because of the environment we're in. Our calves have to be tough to survive here. They've got to survive in drought conditions and hard winters and against predators. Our cattle are just hardier and healthier and tougher because they have to be the ones that survive. So we think our cattle are better. And I think if you watch the video sales and you watch the value of calves, you'll find that Montana steer calves, by and large, bring a little more than their counterparts in other states. So what are you doing to increase the price of Montana steer calves? That's what I need. I'll work on my own expenses where I can and decide if I want what kind of labor and what kind of government programs we want to be in. And by the way, we've been in such a terrible drought the last few years, we've used the heck out of those government programs. But I'll decide about my expenses, but you could help me in increasing the value of a Montana steer calf. And one thing that would help is if we could promote the value of Montana beef from steer calves from Montana. Because then somebody like the S Ranch would all of a sudden need more Montana steer calves, and I have them for sale. So if we could create more demand for Montana beef and more demand for Montana calves, that's what I think the stock growers and other organizations, all of us should be working on. How do we increase the value of what we sell? Increase our profit. Our profitability is either reducing expenses or increasing profit. How do we increase the value of Montana calves? What are we doing to prove to those fellas in Nebraska and Kansas and Texas and Colorado that our calves are worth more and make them compete more? The auction market does a lot of that. But I think if we can figure out ways to promote our product, promote that harder, and there are ways to do that. I'm in marketing. Marketing is what I do. But I think that's one thing we could think about is how do we promote Montana value of Montana calves and Montana beef from Montana calves. I mean, I like the fact there's a lot of demand for beef now. That's great. I think the beef checkoff's done some good things. That's neither here nor there. I'm not talking about demand for all beef. I'm talking about beef from Montana calves and Montana calves out of Montana cows. So that, and then again, I just want to say again, we've got to engage. You've got to be part of this. It takes money to engage. You've got to think about playing a role here. So thank you, Rayleigh, and thank you for doing this time.
Thanks, Taylor. Really appreciate that perspective that you just brought, I think. That's what we're here for, is ideas and thoughts and ways to look at things in a different way. I think we have one more comment, and then we'll wrap it up for the night.
I don't know, it feels like closing arguments from the opening act, but Joe, you should have been the last, or Taylor, and I apologize for being last, but the question was, how do we work together as different organizations to affect change in the industry? And it's four different things. First of all, we've got to be loyal to the industry, not to our organization. We have to put the interests of the industry ahead of the interests of our organization, meaning that we don't
we don't become a professional protester about protesting anything that any other organization comes up with, or any idea that any organization comes up with, because we all want to be profitable. That's the reason we're part of these organizations, is because we want to help the industry. And once we become loyal to the industry instead of our organization, then we become honest with each other. And when we are honest with each other, then we can start to have honest conversations. John and I talked for, 2 hours last spring, and we didn't agree on everything, but we both agreed that we wanted prices to be higher. We wanted to see more packer competition, and that was, and I really appreciated that conversation, and respect John for taking time out of his day to talk with me about it. That was an honest conversation, because I felt like both of us were concerned about the industry. That was our priority. So we had an honest conversation, and then from there, once we're able to be honest with each other, because we know we're all looking out for the industry's best interest and not our organization's best interest, then we can prioritize and we can say, okay, these are things we don't agree on, but here's what we do agree on. And with the help of Joe's leadership and LMA, we had a meeting in Arizona with all the different organizations a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, we found out we all kind of liked each other, and we actually got along, and we found out that we did have a lot of things in common, and that's when we can prioritize. Okay, and Joe, you're right. I agree with you. We need a win, and so by prioritizing the things that we have in common, the things that we agree on, we can identify those things that we can win with. And then, number 4, so we are loyal to the industry, we're honest with each other as organizations, we prioritize the things that we agree on and that we believe that we can win with, because we can agree on those. Finally, we present a unified front with Washington, and we say, these are the things that we believe strongly together as an entire industry, across all of these organizations that represent industry groups, that need to be done to help the industry. And they may not be the number one priority in your mind or my mind, but it'll be a win, and it'll be a start. And once Washington sees that we can come together and we can find common ground, we can find solutions to problems that are presented to us by the industry, then and only then, when we present a unified front to them, together will we begin to work together to advance the industry's interests. And Joe, again, I echo everybody else's accolades. I sure appreciate your time in putting this together. John, you've done a great job with Montana Stock Growers, and I appreciate you guys taking this initiative on. It's a fantastic idea, and I hope it ends up going someplace good. I believe it will. So thanks.
I've done way too much talking tonight, but I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to get it to Turk or Rayleigh or one of them. But I think one of the hardest things that all of us that have been involved in this whole discussion from the very beginning was, well, what do we name it? And I know, I think Ty just left, but he and I have talked a lot about this, Ty Thompson and I. But I'm not sure right now in the environment we're in, with the way we're selling these feeder cattle, with the way we're selling these cattle right now, that right now we're going to get a lot of people's ears, especially in DC, if we keep calling this thing profitability and this and that, because right now there's a little profit in this thing. But will it be there forever? No. I mean, the way I look at this thing, and I thought of it all the way to Miles City and back from that bull sale today. Profitability is good, but I think what we're doing here right now and trying to unify is we're trying to preserve this industry. We're trying to make this thing generational. And right now, the preservance of this industry right now is probably might be a better title for what we're doing in these focus groups, because right now it's pretty profitable. I mean, this thing's okay. If we can't make it on a 350 or a 326 weight steer right now, then we maybe better start re-looking at our cards. And it's not going to be that way forever. And that's why it's hard to get people engaged when it's like this. Everybody kind of forgets about it. And this is the time to put the pedal to the metal and preserve this thing and preserve this industry. But again, I so appreciate all of you guys coming. I mean, you don't know how much this industry needs all of us, and we really do. And we need to come together. We need to find some common ground and move forward and tell our story. And I'm so proud of the Montana Stock Growers. I'm so proud of their board. And these folks stepped out of the comfort zone now. They really did. And they're doing some things that they normally have never done. And the call for unification, the call for trying to help those of us that sell grass and make our living selling grass, so big for our family. And we sure appreciate it. So, Turk, you want to say anything, or Rayleigh, you want to come up and again, let's give the stock growers another big hand, because they really pulled out for last year.
Thank you so much, Joe, and thank you again for your leadership and opening up your doors to host the first kickoff meeting this evening. We really appreciate it, and I'm excited. I think we have some great energy in here tonight, and great conversation and great topics, and I'm really excited to see as we hit the road and start hitting all of the other meetings, what might come of it, because we really, have a lot of things that we can agree upon, and it's really exciting to see us starting to talk about that and bring some unity around those topics. So, as I mentioned, if you still have your phones, I would ask you to grab those. We have two quick final wrap-up questions to kind of help us summarize the evening. And so with that, that first topic is, what topic of tonight's discussion did you most value? I'll give you a few minutes to kind of submit those ideas, and then we'll hit the last comment, and then I'll have Ian come down and we'll do our drawing. Did everybody register for the drawing that needs to? Does anybody need any? All right. While Ian is heading down here, I'll do a quick introduction of our staff. For those of you who haven't met them, Ian Kane is our membership representative for Montana Stock Growers. You probably see him out at bull sales and events throughout the state. We also have Kenny Reese, our marketing and communications director. And then on the block, Ellie Wrighton. She has been diligently taking notes as we have had the meeting and comments being made. So thank you to all of them for kind of assisting and helping pull this event together, as well as the paid staff as well. Thank you for helping us as well. All right, let's move on to the last question, and that is, how can Montana Stock Growers Association and the Producer Profitability Initiative serve you and your family's operations? So final thoughts would be much appreciated, and as we do that, Turk, I guess I'll invite you up here to draw the name of our winner. Close your eyes. So. All right, and we want to thank Western Ranch 5 over here at Eagle for their donation to this. And unbelievable, Ty Thompson is the winner of tonight's tour. Did he leave, or is he down at the bar downstairs? All right, I'm going to let him know that Joe is drawing? Jeff Mosier. All right, Jeff. All right, thank you, congratulations. You can come grab this at the end of the evening. And again, just want to extend our thank you for you guys all. John, Leslie, Turk, myself, as well as our other staff members will be hanging around for a little bit if you have any additional thoughts, questions. And we really look forward to continuing this conversation, so thank you.
Can you just drop them in Ellie's plastic paper box?